Hello everyone, welcome to UrbanSubnet. We have discussed the network layer, the MAC address layer, the IP protocols, and IP address classes in our previous videos. We even configured a few router interfaces with IP addresses. In order to check what an interface IP address is, we need to have access to the device. So when it comes to network equipment access, you should know the difference between the command line interface and the graphical user interface, usually pronounced as GUI. Basically, one uses a terminal emulator and a command line, much like a word processor that you use to type up your documents, and you enter your commands one line at a time or line by line, and then you press enter to have the configuration saved into the router or switch. The other uses a web interface or website hosted by a web server on the router or switch that gives you a graphical interface where you can point and click and make your changes. So how do we physically connect to the devices? There is a console port or USB port on every network device that will give you physical access to that piece of equipment. You can also Telnet or SSH into a device through a management interface IP address or a reachable network IP address on the device. This is normally called remote access. Like I can work on devices at my job from my home office here at home. With security concerns as high as they are today, the preferred access is SSH or Secure Shell. Secure Shell encrypts all data sent and received during the session. So that means when you log into the session and you enter your password, the password is encrypted so someone cannot capture that password through some kind of packet capturing software. So this prevents them from stealing your password and other sensitive data that might be submitted while you're working on your session. I mean, you could be putting in a series of IP addresses and a lot of other valuable information into your computer when you have your Telnet or your SSH session running. You would need the correct cable types to connect to the console port on your piece of network equipment. As shown here on the screen, we have a rollover console cable with a USB to serial adapter that is used on your connect to your computer or your laptop. And then there's a older serial port on a laptop shown here, which is using what we call a DB9 connector. So the DB9 connector on the older laptops that would allow us to connect to the router or the switch. Today, everything, or the newer model switches anyway, come with a USB console connector. So you can see in the top picture, there was an adapter built that would allow that light blue console cable to be connected to a USB port on your computer, which will give you access to the device. So we're going to go into some equipment here in our next slide, and we're going to see how we connect and the type of commands that we can enter in the command line. Okay, everyone, here on our screen, we have our terminal emulator shown here. So we're using PuTTY for this demonstration, but there are a lot of software products out there. Secure CRT is another popular terminal emulator used by many network engineers out in the field. So right here we're looking at Telnet session using port 23. We can switch to, and the Telnet is less secure, so we could switch to SSH, which uses port 22. Port 23 and 22 are well-known port numbers, so you may want to Telnet on port number, say 1223, or you might want to SSH on port, say 2208. You can use any port number you want here to connect to your devices. When you want to connect, you put in your IP address up here, and then you click open, and that would open up the terminal session. Now, this is remote access here, so we would telnet or remote to the device uh, from a remote location. You're not physically at the place where the device is at, or in the data center or the network closet. So if you were physically there, you could actually use your serial port on your computer or your laptop, and you connect through the console port. So you would have the console cable that we shown earlier. Now, when you click serial here, you're going to get the default settings, which is 8 and 1. That's what they're called. So you got the COM1, and you could change this to COM3, because COM1 might be used by something else on your computer or laptop. If you need to change the settings to something different, you could change the speed here, but you could go down to serial and click on this, and you see now we're on COM3. We have a speed of 9600. Data bits are 8. The stop bit is 1. The parity is none, and the flow control is off. So that would be the default settings, but you could change these settings. Some manufacturers will list in their documentation, if you want to console into this device, you need to change your settings, and this is where you would do that. The appearance can be changed. Also, you can change the font type. So let's say we're going to use bold italic. We're going to change the font to 16. You can change the font itself. You can use different types of fonts. So we could change that to here. It'll ascend a console. And now what we're going to do is you click OK, and that has been changed. So now if we go back to our session here, if we wanted to log into something, let's say we're going to go remote Telnet connection. So we're going to click Telnet, and we're going to put in an IP address. And the IP address is there, and we make sure our port number is correct, and we're using a Telnet session, and then you just click open. Now, if we were actually connected to a device, we would have a command line prompt here that we could start typing in our commands, and we're using the PuTTY session. So I just kind of wanted to go over the terminal emulator with you, so you can get a look at what how it works. Okay, everyone, we're in the command line interface, the CLI. So here you can see on the screen, it says press return to get started. So we're going to press the enter button, which is the return. And as you can see, we come to this router greater than prompt. So that's where we first log in. There's not a lot you can do from this prompt. We can press the question mark and see a list of commands that can be run from this prompt right here. The next, you want user exec mode. The next mode, user exec mode, you type enable and press enter, and now you're in the user exec mode. And you can always use the question mark no matter where you are on your device. You can use the question mark. So I can go just type the question mark here and I get back a bunch of commands. I can type the letter E and then do the question mark, and there's nothing there. So if we type E question mark, E question mark, now we get a list of all the commands that start with E. So you got elog, erase, event, and exit, and that's throughout the command line interface. So now, if we look at one of the most commonly run commands, is the show command. So right here from user exec mode, if we do show question mark, you can do the show command. If you do show space question mark, you get back a list of all of the commands that you can do a show on. So let's just pick one for instance. Let's just show clock, and then it tells us the time when you do the show clock. Now, time is very important on the network, and we'll be getting into that a little bit further, but you want your devices to be in sync with the time throughout your network. Now, we talked about the terminal access. and the terminal emulator, which gives us access to the device. That's normally used when you're physically at the location, or you have a device sitting on your desk and you're working on it. You can use a terminal emulator to access the device. We're looking at remote access now, where you're at a device is at a different location from where you are. It could be in the same building. You could be on floor 1, and your data center can be on floor 2, and you're in the same building, but you're not actually physically connected to the device. Or you could be, several miles away. Like I'm at home, I access devices at work. So I just wanted to go over a brief look at the command line interface. In our next video, we're going to be digging deeper into the commands you can run, especially in the configuration mode, and especially commands that can cause problems on the network. So we will get into that in our next video. The graphical user interface. This is a web-based interface that you can use to configure your switches and your routers. Once you have your command line access to the device, you can set up the IP address, and you can set up the HTTP server to run on that device, so you can come to this graphical user interface. And as you can see on the screen here, you can get the status and statistics of the device. You can go into the administration mode, the port management or configuration mode for your interfaces, VLAN management, spanning tree, MAC address tables. There's just a lot of configuration that you can do from this graphical user interface. Most companies try to provide the same configuration tools and in the graphical user interface that you would have from the command line interface. In this example, we can see that they're configuring security on the Radius server, and the amount of retries and the timeouts for the retries, and then the dead time, and some additional protocols that can be set for the Radius server and the user authentication into this device. You also have the multicast traffic. We talked about the multicast IP addresses earlier in one of our earlier videos. And then you have the IP address configuration also. So there's a lot you can do from the graphical user interface. Just brought up another example. Cisco, Juniper, FortiGate, all of the companies have a GUI interface that you can access. And also here we see that on this particular one, you can see the temperature of the switch, the fans on the switch. You can see the port here that is actually something that's plugged into port number 1 on this particular device. So some of them do give you a printout or a picture of the front of the device. So you can see your ports here. You can see your system status and your stats of the switch, the status of the switch. So there's a lot you can do with these graphical user interfaces. I just wanted to show you a couple of them so you can see what they look like. Like I said, once you are able to access your device, you can set this up where you can get to this interface quite easily on the device. As you put an IP address on the device, and then you type in your IP address in your URL, and it'll take you to a login screen for your device. Time for the Pop3 Quiz. In this section, we go over 3 questions and 3 answers on the topic of the video that we just watched. Question number 1. Newer network equipment uses what port type connector for physical console access? The answer to that question is the USB port. USB port has become very popular over the past few years. Question number 2. True or false? Telnet access is secure because it will encrypt your username and password. The answer to that is false. Telnet does not encrypt your username, password, or any data that is sent across the Telnet session. For encryption, you would use SSH, which is secure shell on port 22. Question number 3. We need a command line interface, known as a CLI, from the router pound prompt. What will happen if I type the question mark and press enter? The answer to that is context-sensitive help will display a list of the commands that can be typed at the pound prompt. You can also type a letter like the letter B, question mark, or the letter B space question mark, and get a list of commands that begin with the letter B. This is the end of the Pop3 quiz.
Thank you for watching my daddy's video.